Good afternoon. This is Blockchain speaking. As we head further into the ether of COVID and travelling and non-travelling, and better not say too much because everything changes on a minute basis, so nothing is ever green anymore. We've had some pretty outrageous guests on over the last couple of weeks. Roger Ver, John McAfee, don't even start, and a lot of people within the more showbiz and the more flamboyant side of things. So today we have someone from a company that I can't remember the phrase. No one ever got sacked for buying IBM. I'm not even sure if anyone said that. But today, please welcome Anthony Day, who's a blockchain partner of the wonderful IBM. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Anthony. How are you?
Hi, Monty. I'm well, and thank you for having me on the show.
That's all right. I was actually watching one of your IBM adverts on the TV the other day, and I don't know what it is, but in a world of turmoil, when you see those two blue bars at the top and the bottom of the screen, you think, you know what, there's someone out there underneath all this kind of razzmatazz doing great work and has been doing it for years and years and years. So I'm a bit biased. I'm a fan of your company.
Well, as am I. I appreciate that, Monty. I've not been in IBM too long. It's coming up for 8 or 9 months now, half of which I've actually spent in my bedroom. So it's been a fairly untypical introduction to working in a company like IBM.
Tell us about yourself before you came.
Yeah, sure. So my background and my training is in strategy. So I came up as a corporate strategist in a company called Monitor Group. It was lately acquired by Deloitte. And over the course of that time, strategy became digital strategy, as the requirement to help customers make difficult choices became not just about which market, which customers, which segments. It's actually about what technology, which applications, which underlying infrastructure do you need to enable new propositions, new products, as everything eventually becomes digital.
Yeah.
So that transitioned from Monitor into a company called Deloitte, where I was the chief operating officer for their EMEA blockchain team. And now I'm a partner in IBM.
Right. Okay. So, what does a blockchain partner mean? I mean, it sounds like as if you're like a venture partner at a VC fund.
So it's a rank and title as much as anything. So partner is sort of, relatively speaking, top of the tree within the business. But my job, as ever, is still to help our customers, whether they be enterprises or governments, make difficult choices around the technology. So what it all boils down to primarily is you're trying to transform businesses, industries, processes, and where I get involved is typically where blockchain or consortia or business networks is likely to be part of the solution.
Right. Oh, okay. All right. I know quite a lot about Watson. I missed out on this huge opportunity about 4 years ago to spend 3 weeks in the field in Rwanda with IBM as the first journalist that had ever been invited to do it. But then it got kind of in a conflict of a family holiday to Devon. I probably better leave it there.
Tough choices.
But, I know what I would rather have done. We'll go into what you've been doing, obviously, relevantly. Well, it could be out of date before we talk about it, COVID. But one of the things that I have liked about IBM over the last years, because I've covered them quite widely, and when I started to get into the blockchain space was the trade lens. The block, well, what would you call it, a blockchain product? I don't know, or an initiative or whatever. And TradeLens, as I know, actually, I know very well, it's about putting shipping on the blockchain, the most difficult job in the world and the most difficult logistic, enterprise, so to speak, of all time. How is that going on? Are you involved in that?
Yeah, so TradeLens is one of those kind of poster child business networks. We call them business networks or consortia if you want to, which is basically a private network of a private scalable open network of business entities. It can be a combination of government. It can include port agencies. It can include shipping companies. There's a whole mix of complex parties in something like that. I think we just passed something like 1.3 billion events tracked on the platform, which is not insignificant when you think about a blockchain network.
So people say billion. If an event would be a transaction or a movement or
exactly any step in the process, the creation of a document, the movement of a vessel or an entity from one place to another, a signature, could be anything, right? And all of those events are being tracked on this platform. So you've got a single source of activity, single source of truth from, at a basic level, you're looking from something moving from one place to another, but all the different processes, approvals, checks, all of that traditionally wasn't digital or was digital in certain components and you lost visibility. Huge monumental effort to digitize and create visibility. And that's kind of where we're up to now.
Yeah. So there's about 150 parties involved in that, as my memory serves me well.
It's a big network.
Amazing. Well, I know it's not your special thing, but I mean, that's amazing. I was talking at events about TradeLens 2 years ago. Actually, probably about this time in Cyprus, I was talking about it. That's not likely to happen anytime soon. Where have you been stuck, by the way?
I'm based in Dublin in Ireland. I'm English, but I moved out here about 4 years ago, and I served UK, Ireland, Europe. At this point, right, it doesn't really matter. We're all getting used to how do you deliver technology transformation from your bedroom or from your home office or whatever it happens to be. So I would love to be in Malta, or I'd love to be in Cyprus or anywhere like that where I could go out of an evening. But Dublin's not a bad place to be.
And then what's it been like since lockdown in Dublin? Has Temple Bar been heaving, or has it been?
Yeah, I think it was not a dissimilar experience to what most other countries were going through. Right, you went through a period of uncertainty, then a very specific, very deliberate lockdown. It's do not leave your house unless very specific requirements. Then the boundary expanded out, so we got to, I think it was about a 2 kilometer boundary that we could travel within, which is basically within your neighborhood. Then it would expand out to 10 kilometers or whatever. From a personal perspective, I'm a motorbike fan, I'm a motorbike rider, and having a 2 kilometer radius within which to go out for bike rides really isn't a huge amount of fun, but I did manage to create my own little kind of route through side streets and stuff so I could at least get some entertainment out of it. Didn't break any speed limits, but I still managed to have some fun. And now we're in that kind of space where it's masks in shops, masks in restaurants, but generally speaking, it feels like some degree of normal again.
You're talking to a London ex-dispatch rider of 15 years, 12 years, 12 winters.
That's a hardcore rider then. How many injuries? How many serious events?
Broken right knee, broken ribs, broken nose, broken left arm, and nearly had my left foot amputated. Smashed it all to pieces. And that was only on the Tuesday. And I just bought myself a CX500, which was the old dispatch bike, and that arrived from Birmingham yesterday. And although there's a bit of a problem with the carburettor, I've just been going around the Sussex Downs, just extending my circle.
Nice.
Mate, what's your bike?
I ride a Zero SRF, so it's fully electric.
Oh, cool!
It is unreal. It's like riding a Tesla.
That's mad, because I went to, where did I go? God, where was it? Tokyo, to see the launch of an electric bike. And all the conversations that I had was, it's a bit of PR. We're just doing it for the rest. But you've actually got an electric bike.
Right? They are legitimate. When I went here to talk about blockchain, but Zeros, Energicas, Harleys, the range is good enough on them. You're never going to do 600 miles on these things, but if you're doing city riding, if you're doing regional riding, it's just a ton of fun.
No, absolutely.
And I can plug it in at my house. So what more do you need?
All right, let's leave cam chain to go back to blockchain, shall we? Did you see what I did there? COVID. What have you been up to? How have you been? What can you tell our kind of audience? I mean, try and be as up to date as possible, because by the time we publish, I'm sure things may have gone a little bit out of date. But what's been going on, and how's IBM been helping?
Yeah, I probably can't tell you as much as I might be able to, but hopefully by the time this comes out, we'll be able to have made some formal announcements, which will be super exciting. I mean, if you roll back about sort of 2 months ago in terms of the overall COVID narrative and how people were looking at applying different technologies, apps, etc., everybody under the sun said, we can solve COVID with a proximity tracing app, or we can solve COVID with a health passport or a digital identity solution, or in some cases, you saw some governments locking down and having mandatory applications that were probably infringing on people's privacy in a way that constitutionally in some places it was okay, constitutionally in other places a number of people would be deeply uncomfortable with delivering those sorts of pieces of technology. And so, stand up the blockchain community, decentralized, privacy preserving, security focused, everybody under the sun came out and said, blockchain is the answer to this, that, and the other, right? We can use Hyperledger Indian decentralized identity for solving all of the health crises and all of the COVID testing related incidents, all of the contact tracing, proximity tracing stuff. We can stand that up with DID. And the reality is, in theory, they're probably right. In practice, they're probably 12 to 18 months away from that being practical.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part, is we know we're right architecturally, but can you actually get enough of the government stakeholders, the government entities who hold these particular records to stand up a DID solution in time, securely, to back it, to sponsor it. We're kind of in a model that traditional technology kind of wins out over innovative technology until it doesn't. So
it's almost like a kind of parallel dance of a vaccine then. It's like 12 and 18 months before it actually becomes something tangible, or is it something that's just incremental?
I think it's always going to be a kind of a multi-factor approach. And again, that's the other thing, is everybody assumed that there's one solution to this. There really isn't, because the science doesn't tell us that we've got any particular type of immunity that we can really concretely say, I am COVID proof. I know John McAfee was on the other day saying this thing is going to be around for a while. Get used to it, guys. God bless him. And he's not the chief medical officer of the blockchain sector or whatever. But there are some components of truth there that we may be facing this for a while. So it's going to be a combination of testing, vaccination, or if you're not into that, about eating well, living well, staying healthy, trying to manage down or reduce the risk of some of the comorbidities, or trying to get out, lose some weight. I don't know. It's not a simple formula. No. But if you're managing a government, or if you're managing an enterprise or a company or a staff of 10,000 people, you're flying blind at the moment. You don't know who has what. You don't know whether a particular workplace is safe. You've got a bunch of people setting up policies, separating desks, having certain stairwells up, certain stairwells down, and the hope that reduces the risk for your employees. And if anyone's worked in strategy before, they'll know that the famous phrase is, hope is not a strategy. We need to try and be able to create data points that can help us better manage the safety of our employees, of our citizens, to get people back to work, to get people back on holiday, get people back in the air, get people back traveling into football stadiums, into theaters, in a way that is appropriately safe based on our best knowledge at that time. Yeah. And so that, to me, is about a kind of combination of being able to present or validate that somebody is low risk. Yeah. And what does that mean? Have they been vaccinated? We don't have that yet. So what can we do in the meantime? We can proactively test. Yeah. We can go into a certain place and using a government approved test. And look, there are a million different tests out there. So you've already got a regulatory requirement around that particular test. Show me a test result that has been validated as up to date within the last 24 hours, and I can scan a QR code and get through a turnstile. Or I can share my particular results to an airline or to a government on the other side of my flight path and say, I have an accurate test within 24 hours, or 2 negative results within 24 hours, such that I don't have to quarantine for 2 weeks when I arrive and extend my holiday, or incur a bunch of cost, or have a difficult experience when I want to get home to my family. Yeah. That's what we're trying to enable here.
Yeah. I mean, the thing for me as a traveller, a great traveller, what's gone on, bear in mind what time we publish about quarantine this and quarantine that, about Spain this, and obviously everyone's terrified of a second wave. I don't think we've even seen the second part of the first wave, really. I mean, everyone's just hoping that someone comes up with a piece of genius, or one of those governments that you talk about, or organisations, maybe including yours, that will do something that's kind of really fast and all that. But I just want to kind of pin you down a bit. So what are you doing? Are you creating tests? Is that your major work here?
So the concept here is test certification, if you want to call it that. It's saying, how do I provide a verified digital test result that somebody can carry as a credential, or that somebody can carry as a digital certificate that will allow them to share it with others, against which those people can make a decision. Am I clear to enter a building? In organizations where you've got third-party workers, contingent workers, or where you've got operating environments where it's difficult to socially distance, oil rigs, as I said, football stadia, theaters, in mining organizations working underground. In those cases, it's very, very difficult to socially distance. So how can we decentralize and distribute the ability to proactively test? Yeah. How can we share those results digitally? How can we develop the standards such that you don't get spurious results? It's only tests where the science is sufficiently mature that we understand what the results mean, where we can create kind of protocols and regimen. I'm talking about medical protocols here as opposed to blockchain protocols, but where we can create protocols around what does that mean? How frequently should I test? Yeah. How up to date is a result, such that people can be carrying that data with them and sharing it on a permission basis. Yeah. Now, that sort of network is going to require multiple parties. It's, again, a good blockchain story. You can be tested at a hospital, a private facility, a pharmacy, a number of other places. You can share that result with your employer, with entertainment organizations, with airlines. You want to validate that I am who I say I am. That when I get tested, I've done sufficient KYC or know your customer or identity management that I am who I say I am. It's not my wife's certificate or it's not my brother's certificate, that I can validate that proof. And then when I look up and I kind of check that the QR code or the code or whatever it is, that it is an up-to-date record, that it has been issued, and there's an attestation from a testing company, a diagnostics company, a pharmacy, whoever took the test and whoever kind of created the result, that this was delivered by a verified party. It's not too similar to driving license. It's not too dissimilar to educational qualifications. There's a bunch of different blockchain analogies for this, but this one's harder, or conceptually a little bit harder, because it involves governments, healthcare, and COVID.
So you're trying for test certification, but that's got to be verified, right? So the verification is going to have to come from one airline that's saying, excellent, Anthony got on this plane, here's his QR code, he's gone from Dublin to Kigali or Dublin to London or whatever it is. And then the country, the airline, the airport, they've all got to be in agreement that this test certification is verified and they are happy to accept it as kind of proof.
And you're getting into the really complicated part now, which is the interoperability.
That's the next word on my lips.
Yeah, and what we're talking about here is not necessarily a technology standard in isolation. It's also a medical standard. And so there are a number of different working groups, WHO being involved in many of them, a number of airports being involved in some of them. There are so many parties out there trying to solve for how do we think about credentials? How do we manage it? What we want to try and do is at a minimum, make sure that this is viable within a national infrastructure. Because you can manage standards, you can manage the parties to that level, you can manage government and guidance to that level, or you can it's contained who the parties are, and you can agree all of the standards and the activities in that ecosystem. And there's enough demand, right? You've got 30 million employees in the UK, and a number of those, about half of those, are in large organizations that probably have large buildings or large places where stuff has to happen. Not all of us had the privilege of being able to work remotely. Many of us do. But then think about small to medium-sized businesses, sole traders, plumbers, builders, contingent workers, people who work on oil rigs. How can they provide that extra degree of comfort to whoever employs them, that they're covered to work, or that they are low risk to be able to come back to work?
So in a weird way, do you think that this will make blockchain enterprise adoption accelerate?
I think it's another use case off the hopper, and the interesting thing is it's a concept we've already proven in other places. Right. So one of the projects I worked on before was around certification of learning credentials. In IBM, we have the Learning Credentials Network in the US. It's really just a certificate that something has happened, that someone is prepared to attest to, that I can then present to an employer in the same way you're applying the same logic to a test or to a visa or to a vaccination certificate. Certificates is a strong blockchain domain. What we're looking at is there a scale of problem big enough that enterprises or governments are prepared to invest? And this is one of those ones right now where the answer is absolutely yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Away from IBM, are there any kind of blockchain enterprise projects you particularly admire or you think have been groundbreaking or even slow but steadily increasing their influence?
Gosh, that's a really good question, Monty. You forced me to think on that one.
Good, thanks. I was losing it for a minute.
only the hard questions here. I love that. So I think what we can look at from afar is over the last 5 years, the banks led out the way first. And you saw interbank settlement, interbank payments. I think the emergence of central bank digital currencies as a domain now is fascinating, which the enterprise adjacency to that is digital assets. So I've been really interested by watching Mobility Open Blockchain Initiative and some of the work that the automotive companies are doing with blockchain. And there's two sides to this, right? There's the sexy, groundbreaking, new to world projects, and there's what Alison Macaulay calls the mundane usefulness projects. And these are the ones that actually are the ones that are probably going to get adopted first. But the sexy ones are the ones that get lighthoused. So when I see Jaguar Land Rover working with IOTA, or where I see automotive companies trying to use Internet of Things or Hedera to try and create IoT multi-sensor networks, I think that's fascinating because it enables so many use cases around creating data unions, or data cooperatives, being able to use all of this information for commercial opportunity or for commercial purpose or for new products and propositions. I think that's super cool.
Yeah.
At the same time, I'm really excited by seeing a bunch of waste being taken out of supply chains or procurement systems that can then be reinvested in innovation. And that's unfortunately the mundane usefulness of my job, is that I'm not necessarily the visionary who's creating these kind of next IOTAs or next DAOs, but I'm there to try and unlock 5, 10, 15 million for companies and governments to then go and reinvest in the sexy stuff that comes next.
Yeah. I think there's also a question of perception, right? So one of the things that I was really interested in when I was actually on the conference circuit and was talking about blockchain, and I figured that this was blockchain for good was going to be one of the earlier kind of winners, I suppose. I'm not sure if that's the case at the moment, but one of the things that I did like was Ford and setting up a blockchain to track minerals. Mm-hmm. And it was all down to cobalt and iron, batteries, etc., and all that stuff, which I thought was an amazing thing. You know what I mean? But then the
responsible sourcing blockchain network. That's actually one of ours, and I don't know whether that was a plug. I don't know whether you've done your research.
No, you're right. Because while I was saying that, I was trying to think, who did they do it with, and it was IBM. Sorry,
shameless plug, but I appreciate it, Monty.
I just was trying to work out the acronym, and then the most famous acronym eluded me. You know what I mean? But then you see, like I saw this week, there's certain vested parties have got certain interest. Tesla's Musk basically kills kids because they're doing stuff in DRC, trying to get cobalt out of the ground. And that's the type of thing which is just so stupid and so damaging. We have a kind of problem in crypto. Crypto has a kind of problem, and it's the way that it's seen, right? The Bitcoin price went up to $11,000 yesterday. The people who don't really know about crypto think they're full of scammers and they're full of idiots and they're full of McAfees, and he really should have God bless him on his gravestone. I think that would be quite funny. So there's a kind of perception value there. Is Bitcoin digital asset? Is it most of us that have got any brains realize that Bitcoin is here to stay. You can't ban it and all that stuff. But the reputation of crypto is of one of slightly murky, a little bit grubby. On the other side, the first blockchain, Bitcoin, blockchain seems to have this opposite reputation, where it's just seen as really boring, and it's not. Even that kind of example I was using about Musk and what he did with Ford. Is there a way that we can kind of, I don't know, where do you think blockchain is at the moment? That's what I'm trying to say. I used to think that the internet was infected, and this was like a cybersecurity amazing thing, 2.0 web. I'm not sure where it is at the moment, because it should be right in front of my face where it is at the moment. Bear in mind, this is a crypto blockchain podcast, and I get all different opinions. We've had a lot of guests on here, and most of them are extraordinarily eloquent, as are you. But where do you think blockchain stands at the moment? Where are we at? Are we anywhere in that 12 to 18 month process that you said would take to kind of go in parallel with a vaccine? Where are we with blockchain at the moment? How, apart from trade lens and all of those type of things, where are we at?
I think we're in a good space. I think we're in a healthy space. What I would say, and what I say over and over again, is that we've proven every one of the major blockchain and DLT concepts over the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Right. We can notarize stuff. We can have decentralized approaches to stuff. We can do autonomous governance. We can create digital representations of physical stuff. We can pair it with IoT. We can have competitors working on the same network with a governance model that works. All of the concepts of how to do decentralized technology have been proven in one way or another. Where we are next is where the business case and the parties involved are mature enough, or the opportunity is significant enough that people will invest behind it. And there's a legacy technology challenge to this as well, which is that not everybody is wired for transforming stuff that should be transformed. Not everybody wants necessarily to enable transparency. Just talk to your colleague Jean-Michel about trying to sell blockchain to estate agents. They don't want transparency. That's the wrong place to be going looking for digital transformation with blockchain.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing is that there are a number of projects that have been 12, 24 months in the making that are very mature. There are a number of networks or platforms. I'm going to talk to our own because that's my job, but TradeLens, Food Trust, RSBN, Trust Your Supplier, that have had multiple implementations. We've got over 20 networks with over a million blocks produced worldwide, which is pretty big in terms of the number of production networks.
Are you close? I mean, the time I spent with IBM, it was always, it seemed to me you were betting on two things, right? You were betting on Africa and you were betting on Watson, right? That seemed to me what the future of IBM was. Sounds things might have changed a bit. Would you ever get to the point where you might describe yourself as a blockchain company?
That would be a lovely thing to be able to say, but I don't want to speak on behalf of IBM too much here, but I think we represent technology and innovation in multiple different forms, right? Yeah. We're also responsible for running and operating very large infrastructure that's been established for 10, 20, 30, 50 years in some cases, and we're still keeping the lights on. And what I think IBM is very good at is secure, robust, scalable, production-ready technology, whether that's blockchain or whether that's mainframe. Yeah. Right? We operate the full spectrum. It's our job to keep the lights on and keep organizations running, and also to help kind of build the road, establish the new paradigms as they come along. I just used the word paradigm, but
don't ever do that again. Don't say fucking solution either. No solution, no paradigm.
I will try to hold back the urge. But what I would say is that it's not just about one technology in isolation either, right? I'm a digital strategist. My job is not to be, well, firstly, it's to be blockchain agnostic, but secondly, to technology agnostic. Yeah. Your job is to objectively present the options around how should this particular experience or industry be transformed? What is going to be most beneficial based on the requirements? And how do I build it? If the answer is, with a spreadsheet and a credit card, go for it, right? Yeah. Do that. If that's going to provide the benefit you're looking for. If it's more sophisticated, if it's a larger network, if you need to have an IBM blockchain with Hyperledger that has interoperability Corda because you've got two networks that talk to each other, the answer is that. And if you can automate, ultimately, we're just trying to make the best of the jobs or the desires that we've always had. We've always wanted to go to work. We've always to make a living, to be able to trade, to transact, to share information. Yeah. It used to be on a horse. Now it's in a Tesla. It used to be on a piece of parchment. Now it's over a blockchain, or maybe it's an artificial intelligence bot being able to create something for us. We're just iterating how much efficiency or how much effectiveness we can get out of those cycles. And there's a bunch of places where blockchain works really well. There's a bunch of places where it doesn't.
Yeah. It's a bit like horses, as you say. You're right. It's, everyone talks about the combustion engine at this moment being the most terrible thing in the world, and it's got to be replaced. But it replaced something that was also terribly sophisticated and terribly awful, and that was horse travel. You know what I mean? It's everywhere stank. There had to be places where ostlers and grooms were. There had to be 4-story places for horses to move around in a garage all night long and all that stuff. So what sometimes is seen to be is, awful, probably what it replaced was worse,
So look, yesterday's horse droppings is today's legacy and technical debt, right?
Listen, mate, the horses I back, the ones that I put money on, they may as well be in that. It's not a garage, is it? What do you call it? A stable, yeah. So you mentioned Hyperledger. Are you naturally biased towards Hyperledger? Is that something that you love?
So what I would say is, personally, from my personal perspective, I'm multi-technology. So I'm the right tool for right job. What you'll see in IBM is that the technology that we look at in blockchain or distributed ledgers, most of our stuff is Hyperledger based, Hyperledger Fabric. Yeah. And the reason that is for a few different reasons. Firstly, it's open source, open governance. And open governance is another really important part, because some platforms or protocols that say they're open source are not open governance. And for some of our clients, particularly in financial services or government, that is a genuine concern. They don't want that. You can see a fork in the technology or a particular change of direction in the technology that they're locked into, even if it is considered open source. But our guys are blockchain people too, so they're fascinated to work with public blockchain, with private blockchain, with any variation.
Yeah.
But again, as I said, IBM is there for enterprise transformation, but firstly to do a great job to be secure and to have technology that will stand up to the requirements. Yeah. And you can only do that with enterprise-ready, secure technology. And for us, that's Hyperledger Fabric at the moment.
Right, fair enough. Good answer. One of the things I found when I moved into journalism about 20 years ago, I was a website editor, right, at a local newspaper, and I was absolutely despised, because of the salary that I was on, which was terrible anyway, and because of the non-digital aspect of journalism. Has there been, or is there still, kind of any form of opposition within IBM towards blockchain? Is it adopted widely? Do people love it, or do people that are on different technologies see it as something to be scared of? I appreciate you do work for them, but I'd be interested in your answer.
So I think the term blockchain polarizes any audience you go and speak to, whether that's your own colleagues, whether that's your clients, whether it's your grandmother. You say the word blockchain, it's like, oh. At this point, 5-8 years in, it already triggers some sort of bias or a response to say, absolutely. Is that crypto? Is that, if you know about it, then very quickly. I have some fantastic conversations where colleagues of mine who work in entirely different teams come up with use cases or propositions or start brainstorming ahead of me how to talk about certain solutions or platforms. And be like, you're in the wrong team. You should be doing my job. And that's fascinating. And I think wherever we are in the world, people have got a curve to come up. If you're not used to thinking about networks or transforming with an entire industry, that's not a mindset that people are in the same way as if you're doing investigative journalism versus doing stocks and shares. The two mindsets aren't going to merge well. And so being able to talk about one and operate in another is going to be very different. What I would say, and this is something that I think COVID has taught us over the last little while, is that the idea of collaboration, of working together, even competing parties, parties that used to go to battle or who are fiercely competitive, can actually start creating propositions together. Yeah. Global startups, you see banks doing it, you see logistics companies doing it, you see the automotive companies pivoting very quickly to start producing medical equipment. And they can't do that themselves, they don't have the experience, so they've got to partner up with medical companies. You start seeing that cross-pollination, you start realizing that's what we do every day. And the rest of the world is slowly starting to get that that's an option. And that's hugely exciting for me.
Yeah, I suppose that's why I like those two blue bars at the top and the bottom of my TV screen when you open your budget and spend money on TV advertising. I think a lot of people think like that about IBM. I'm going to give you one final question, and then you can shill all you like about your rival blockchain podcast, because all is fair in love and war. I think you alluded to earlier, and I kind of know the answer, but what's your view on the kind of digital asset, digital currency space for enterprise?
That's a really good question. I've had probably 5 or 6 conversations on this in the last 2 or 3 months, specifically talking about pros and cons. And what I think you have to break it down is what are you doing with digital assets or digital currency in the context of your enterprise? Are you using tokens to represent particular assets because you want the clearing and settlement of that particular asset to make sense? If you're talking about property, how are we going to create liquidity and people involved in those markets such that a token structure or data infrastructure which involves tokens, for that to be a feasible solution to use, right? So there's some very acute places where that makes sense. If you talk about acceptance of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever it is, to pay for goods and services, I think that's a different use case altogether, and that's going to be based on adoption. Right? If you look at Visa and MasterCard, you don't see your contactless point of sale terminals all over the place because customers were demanding it. Visa and MasterCard had to pay in most cases to get into those points of sale to be able to implement their technology because it was either more rewarding for them or it was lower cost. So actually there was an investment to make that happen. And in the crypto space, that's a tough one to do because Bitcoin doesn't have a CEO. Doge does, it's Elon Musk, but that's a different story. Then when you start talking about digital assets, I had a really, really interesting conversation with the head of blockchain for Panini. So they're the company that sort of famous for football stickers, that's it, baseball cards, trading cards. And they now have a blockchain secured or DLT secured, it's on Hyperledger Sawtooth platform for their digital trading cards. And I asked the question, why isn't
that sounds like sacrilege already.
Well, and he gave me Brendan Cooper, really super smart guy. You should go and check him out. He's brilliant. And he said the reason we haven't yet is because the world isn't ready. Yeah. Our customers, the traditional Panini customers, do not want to deal with the concept of hot and cold wallets, and we don't want to deal with custody.
Yeah.
So you've got a user experience challenge, and you've got an institutional technology challenge in being able to support a public blockchain infrastructure around digital assets. And that's not unique to Panini. That's going to be the same challenge everywhere you go.
Yeah,
and until that becomes easier or more mainstream or more accepted by the individuals who are going to be looking at those things, you're going to end up with an alternative version. He's on, Brendan knows the path he's on. He knows the direction of travel, but for the sake of what's practical today, that's where they ended up. Really interesting conversation.
No, sounds Brendan Cooper. I'll check him out. So might have him on. Tell us about your rival podcast.
We're not rivals, Monty. It's all love. It's all love.
Love.
Blockchain is an open community, and everyone can do their thing. I'm no more a rival as Waleed and the Insure blocks are. Everybody's trying to do their own thing. My intent with Blockchain Won't Save the World is the name of my podcast.
Is it yours or is it IBM sanctioned?
No, personal thing, personal venture, a way to help me while the time away during COVID. And it takes something like sort of 12 to 18 hours per episode. I was warned in advance that that's what it could take if you want it to be done properly.
Yeah, really.
Or without having a staff, as you do, Monty. I'm sure you have your.
Tell me about it.
Well, you've got your army of minions who can do all the editing and the beard grooming in advance and all that stuff. I don't unfortunately have that. But you
can tell that's a lie. Look.
It gets more disheveled the longer the interview goes on, right? But it starts off very, very pristine. I've still got some work to do on mine. But it's really about telling the stories, such as the question you asked, where is blockchain today? Yeah. The more people who are doing actual enterprise use of the technology, no hype, real stories, that's the point. And I'm just coming up to the end of season 1. We've got an episode dropping this weekend. It'll probably be out by the time this goes out. But I've got 6 friends and colleagues from around the blockchain world, an architect, a lawyer, a startup, a product owner, an inventor, and an ecosystem manager, all on the podcast. And we're doing a roast. We're doing the roast of blockchain.
You're doing a roast.
Yeah. And it's the perfect way to end the season. We've had a lot of serious conversation about real issues, and we're ending up with some not so serious, but still poignant learnings on what are all the things that went wrong in blockchain over the last 5 years.
Is it video or just audio?
It's going to be both. It's going to be both for the first time. It's normally audio, but for the first time we did a Zoom call, much like this one. Okay. And I'm delighted. I'm really looking forward to getting it out.
Just give us the name one more time to my audience.
The name of the podcast is Blockchain Won't Save the World. So if you want to check it out, there's a website for it, blockchainwon'tsaveth.world, or you can find it on Apple, Google, Spotify, all the usual stuff.
Blockchain won't save the world, but on the basis of the conversation we've just had over the last 40 minutes, Anthony, it's been a real pleasure. And I think you may be being a bit too ironic there. You might actually be saving the world with what you're doing. All the best of luck with all your efforts. It was a pleasure to meet you. And once all this COVID bullshit has got away, let's have a drink in Temple Bar and sort out the worries of the world. I'll try and ask you some more good questions. But thank you very much for your answers. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. I appreciate it, Monty. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for the good questions, and keep up the great work. Thank you very much. That was Anthony Day, the blockchain partner at IBM. Fascinating conversation, slightly more cerebral than our more outrageous guests. But this is Blockspeak signing off. It's goodbye from Anthony. And it's goodbye from me. Thank you. See you next week.